Hey everyone, this is Divya, and I'm super thrilled to be here with one of my awesome authors, Jeanie Chang. Welcome, Jeanie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Jeanie and I met last year in a diversity panel. Of course, it was on Zoom, and there was something that connected us, the same energy and that same vibrancy, that love for life. And as we connected, Jeanie talked about her book, and she said, Divya, how could we work together? And of course, as you all know, my internet just went up. I'm crazy about books. And when my team and myself, we took a Jeannie's storyline, we were of course excited because we do not take on everyone. So Jeannie's story is very, very special, and I'm going to let her share in her own words. So Jeannie, share with us, what was it that prompted you to write your story?
Loaded question. Happy to share. I had my story in my head for a while, maybe 10 years. But I think in the last 5 years when I went private practice, I really went, how can I help the people I work with? So I put it on paper, and COVID-19 helped in the sense of I wasn't traveling. And so I was like, you know what? This is a good time to finish my book, and then I happened to meet you, and then it really propelled things pretty fast. So I feel like everything was meant to be, but I really wanted to share my story, to shine a spotlight, mental health stigma in the Asian American community.
You're absolutely right. And I know that you're of in generation. Could you expand on that? Like, what was it like growing up in a Korean family over here?
Yes, thanks for asking. A second generation Korean American, which means my parents brought me over when I was a baby. It was a good childhood, right? I never want to say it was not unhappy, but there's a lot of stress. In the Asian culture, it's about being perfect, academic achievement. Yes, I'm going to bring out those stressors, not really showing expressions, not really expressing the stress and maybe the depressed feelings that anybody feels at a given time. I grew up with very loving parents. But as a child, I wished that they had asked a little bit more how I was doing. How are you feeling? This is stressful. Now, there were times when they brought it up, but I wanted to share more. And so one of the big proponents now as a family therapist is I want to break those unhealthy patterns, if that makes sense. So sharing my story was me helping validate the experience, because many people are having my experience as I did as a child. But I wanted to also bring that to light and say, hey, this isn't healthy. How can we create healthier families today? Again, based on my own life. So I want it to be very personal. So it's my story. It's not easy.
It's definitely
vulnerable.
not easy. And
Yeah.
I have to say that you have opened up in story so beautifully. And you're absolutely right that your desire to create happy and healthy families is that what happens is that parents, they have not been exposed. So as we move from generation to generation, we are being more exposed to new philosophies, positive reinforcement, parenting. Sometimes parents do the best they can. And how can we bring about a change is by education, and you're absolutely right. And that's what your book does. So can you share just one of the stories from your life that was a turning point?
Sure. And it's so funny, even as we're talking about this, I'll admit, the Asian cultural woman in me is like, wow, I'm being really vulnerable about my story. It's in print. But I want to share the story because I know that people can relate. There got to be a point in my life at age 14. So teenage years, which are very difficult. We agree, right? Teenage years can be fun, but there's a lot of angst because you're discovering who you are. I reached a breaking point in my sense of self. I felt like I was a disappointment to my parents, to be honest. Again, it's not like they said things to me that were hurtful. I want to make that clear. But there were times when I felt so much pressure by them. Do this, do that, better. When you're not hearing like, oh, but we love you as you are, which is not the Asian way, I got to a point where I went holding everything in and feeling like I can't do it, right? I was going to be too much of a disappointment. So that was a breaking point at age 14. It was a very spiritual experience, and I make it very clear, but that changed my life. And people think, oh, that was so long ago, you're in your 40s now. It doesn't matter. That powerful experience defined my future. Mm-hmm. And the experience I had, because I grew up in a loving Christian home, so my faith grounded me. But right when I thought, I don't know if I could go on, at age 14, I remember it like it was yesterday.
Mhm.
But God spoke to me or came to me. And that's my story. And I haven't looked back since. That does not mean I don't struggle. We all struggle. It's normal. But I want to share that I have not struggled in that same way. I won't doubt who I am again. Even if I don't feel good enough, that's why with the book, I'm delving deep, going, you know what? That experience changed my life. So I'm going to stay grounded in who I am, knowing that it's a process. Identity is a process. It's never final.
I love it, what you said, that identity is a process. And as we are evolving, some of the things remain the same. So what you talked about, spirituality, faith. So some of the staples remain consistent in our lives that define us. And finding that identity is so important, especially for teenagers. Because during that moment, it's so much struggle. And I even recall during my teen years that it's all about fitting in, belonging. And unless you have that sense of belonging, and so many times, so many students can form their own groups and exclude people out. Hearing about your story and creating that support groups for others is so, so critical. And you have given so many nuggets in the book. It's in the book. Folks, I cannot share. So, okay. Moving forward, can you share with us? What happens is that there's so many people out there who want to share their story, and yet they're like, oh, is it good enough? You know, so many people have told stories before, and how can I just share my story? What good it's going to do? So can you tell us from that perspective as to what made you go over that hump?
Great question. I'm glad I did it. Let's put it out there. I'm really glad that I shared my story. There is a very empowering experience sharing your story, right, with the world. There's also a vulnerable experience as well. The hump was actually an experience I had. I think a lot of experiences affect you, right? Where I had an epiphany last summer, so during COVID, really, where I realized Asian American students were having the same experience I did 30 plus years ago, and I went, wait a second, I need to share my story to help them. So what motivated me, honestly, was to help others. Mm-hmm. And so it became less about me, but obviously as I'm writing the story, of course it's me, right?
Of course.
But you're thinking the end goal, which is how can I make an impact? So my final thing was, I just want to make some impact in this world, even if it's one person who reads my book and goes, thank you for validating my experience. So that's what got me over the hump, really, being just talking to other Asian American students and realizing, I think I can help. That's an empowering moment, folks, when you realize, wait a second, I do believe I can. Because I believe we all have a story where we can empower others, and then sharing it empowers you.
Oh, I love it, love it, love it. Thank you for sharing that, because folks, if you are thinking that your story is not unique, it's you. Your experience is just for you. And here's the thing, I'm going to share a story from one of my previous books. So a couple of years back, as I was writing my last book, there's this day I wake up in the morning, so cloudy, one of those cold, dreary winter days. As I'm looking out of the window, just not motivated at all. And I'm slouching and slumping, and I'm like, oh, why the heck do I keep on writing book after book? So I went ahead and turned off the computer, and there was this email. And the email said, thank you, Divya. As I was reading your book, I felt that somebody gave me permission to be myself. And I had this breakthrough that I was looking for in years. So Jeanie, when you mentioned that if my story could help one person, that's it. Mm-hmm. And of course, as you know, I was just like, it's as if you are charging a battery, and the flow of words that ensued after that, there's nothing that compares. So folks, if you're thinking of writing a story, don't think about that your story is not valuable. Mm-hmm. As Jeanie said, one person impacted is a family impacted. A family impacted is a friends impacted. Friends impacted is a neighborhood impacted. So the ripple effect can be far-reaching. And your story can become a survival guide for somebody else, because there may be somebody who's behind you on the journey that you have traveled. So don't underestimate the power of your story. We made the book go live several days back, and to our surprise, we did not tell Jeanie. We are revealing it to you right now. On the third or fourth day, your book did become a bestseller. So now, continuing on the journey for last 4 days, we have had our best-selling campaign going, and I want to share your book has done phenomenally well. She is a #1 international best-selling author in several countries: Canada, UK, Australia, and US, of course, and for 4 straight days. It's not just bestseller, folks. She has been a #1 bestseller consistently. And I gotta share the story about Japan. Our team launched somewhere around like 11:30 of March 10th. The launch was supposed to be on March 11th. They pushed it out, and we do promotions over different areas, and people in Japan went crazy. We had sales up to 130, 140 sales.
I don't know anybody in Japan, but that's super cool. Wow.
So that just shows the merit of the book, the power of the book, that when book is good and once it's out there, what can happen. So tell me about your experiences. What has been happening around you?
It's been great. It's nerve-wracking to promo your own book. Let me just say that. So thank you for Divya and her team. But I am a corporate speaker, so I speak a lot on mental health and well-being in the workplace. Because I have a relationship with a lot of corporate leaders and organizations, and I plugged my book, hesitantly I'll tell you, but the response has been so warm. They're like, oh, well then you're gonna have to come back and talk about your book. I'm like, really? Oh, okay. I mean, that's great. So I've already had some book talks reserved for April and May. May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month and National Mental Health Awareness Month. So they're specifically targeting me a lot of organizations. I would say 3 or 4 already, for me to come back in May and talk about my book. And that's, first of all, very humbling. It's such a privilege that I'm just coming back just to talk about what I wrote, but I'm excited. So yeah.
Yes, I'm super excited for you because it's so powerful. You'll be able to share your story and impact so many people, because at the end of the day, folks, it's about driving the impact, unpacking the influence, and making a difference. So Jeanie, share with us, you are #1 international best-selling author, and you're seeing already the impact of having a book, where you're starting to get more speaking gigs. What's next for you?
More speaking gigs? No. Actually, I just finished my 2nd book, and it's on parenting. I know. That was easy to write because I'm currently living the parenting experience, right? Talking about your childhood is a little harder, but I finished that, so the next experience is to go through editing. and then I have a 3rd book that I have planned that will be on relationships. And again, all from the lens of Asian American mental health, my experience. I'll definitely thread my personal stories because I think that's how people relate. So that's what's next for me, trying to get those books done through Divya and her team.
Oh, that is so exciting, folks. I can't wait to read the 2nd book. So just so that you'll know, of course, we are asking you to get that 1st book because it is phenomenal. It is one of my favorites. What can I say? And I'm psyched about the next 2 books that will be coming. So I can't wait to get my hands on those. I know it's exciting, but just wanted to share about that. And as we end, would you like to share one parting thought with our listeners and audience?
I think write the book if you have a story that you want to share. Like I said, it's an empowering experience. The purpose is to write it for you, to share it for yourself. Writing it was therapeutic. So it was therapy for me. And as Divya shared earlier, I'm good with making one impact, but our impact is a ripple effect, like you said. So that one person impacted can impact another person, that can impact another person. So at the end of the day, if you have something pressing, I said this before, because first of all, it's good for your mental health. You don't want to hold it in.
Right.
Share it, put it on paper, and you never know what's going to happen.
Yes. And that's the beauty of it. Thank you, Jeanie. Really appreciate it again for entrusting us and sharing your story with people. Because
thank you for making it a great experience. It was easy peasy. I'm sure it's not always easy peasy, but it really was. Yes. So thank you.
My pleasure and my honor. And thank you, listeners, for watching us, because without you, our message would not be complete. So thank you.